The first time I suspected my wife of infidelity was after my son Matt's 13th birthday. On my way home from work, I picked up some pictures from the drugstore. Julia wasn't home yet, so I sat down and looked at the pictures. What a beautiful day it was. Matt was so surprised when he got home, we found a surprise party with all his friends waiting for him. Looking through the photos, I found a really nice picture of Matt and my friend Steve. It was a close-up of both of their faces. Steve has been my best friend my whole life. My kids call him Uncle Steve, and his kids call me Uncle John. We are so close. When I looked at the image of their faces side by side, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. They had the same color hair, black, they had the same eye color, green, and they had the same narrow nose. They had similar skin tone and facial features. If I hadn't known they weren't, I would have sworn they were father and son. A few others were pictures of kids at a party, but my attention was caught by something in the background. There was Julia and Steve. They were in, I would say, a very intimate position. In fact, it looked like they were about to kiss or had just kissed. I scrutinized the other photos for anything else where they were together, but couldn't find anything. I took the two pictures out of the bag and put them in a desk drawer in my home office. The fact that my son looked like Steve and that I had a picture of Steve and Julia in an intimate-looking pose proved nothing. But I immediately wondered if in hindsight I could recall any other evidence that Julia might have been unfaithful to me. I didn't have much time to think, because a few minutes later Julia walked through the front door, kissed me, and headed upstairs to change. It was something she did every day on her way home from work, and I'd never had any reason to suspect her before. With suspicion flashing through my mind, I headed up the stairs to see if I could catch her doing anything. When I entered the bedroom, Julia was surprised to see me, but didn't act like my presence was unwelcome. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" Julia asked, changing into her house clothes. "Not too bad. I picked up the pictures from Matt's party on the way. They turned out great. But didn't we take too many of them? 5 reels of film for a birthday party?" I asked. After all the trouble we went through to make him think he wasn't having a party, only to throw him a surprise party like this one, I wanted to make damn sure he had enough pictures to remember it by, Julia said. It was great to invite all his friends, family, and even Steve, Mary, and their kids to the party, I said. Did she flinch when I mentioned Steve's name? There was some movement, but was it natural or was it a reaction to the name being spoken? "Yeah, it was a great party," Julia said. Other than a possible flinch, I didn't get anything else out of her. I decided I would keep an eye on her and Steve as much as possible to see if they were up to anything. I didn't use all the high-tech tracking devices, audio recording, video cameras, and phone tapping, at least not right away, but just started tracking if Julia said where she was going to be. I would then find reasons to call and see if she was there or not. A few weeks later, the body of a missing little girl was found in the lake, and as luck would have it, her family had DNA testing done beforehand so that she could be identified in case anything happened. Julia gave me the perfect opportunity to find out what was bothering me. "John, I think we should do these DNA cards for the children too. If something ever happens and a body or body part is found, I'd want to know if it's our child or not, wouldn't I?" Julia asked. "You're absolutely right. This girl was missing teeth and the body was pretty badly damaged, so normal methods didn't work. I think having the children's DNA on file is a wise decision," I said. I said I would take all 4 of our children, Matt, Ashley, Hannah, and Sarah, to get tested and put them on file with the county. Once at the family doctor's office, I decided to make the request. "So, John, what happened?" Dr. Smith asked. "I would like copies of the tests. It's not that I don't trust the county in terms of keeping the information in case something happens and they need it. It's just that I feel better having copies of them in my home safe," I said. "Sure, John, no problem. Many parents make the same request," Dr. Smith replied. 2 weeks later, I went out of town for a week on business. There I walked into a doctor's office with DNA tests to check myself out. The doctor, a woman I lived with for 8 years, claims I am the father of her 4 children and is now demanding child support from me. I have reason to believe that I am not the father of one or more of them. I have demanded DNA records of the children from her. And now I am asking you to tell me how many of them I should be financially responsible for," I said. Of course, it's sad when someone says a child is yours when it's not. I've seen several marriages destroyed as a result of this. Are you saying you are not married to this woman? The doctor asked. No, ma'am. We broke up 3 years ago. I'm married to someone else, and all this alimony actually pisses me off. I had the envelope with the results on it before I came home. I hadn't looked at them yet, and the closer I got to getting the results, the less sure I was that I wanted to know everything. When I got home Friday night, there was a note on the table from Julia saying that she and the kids had gone to her mom's for the weekend. Unable to endure an entire weekend to figure out what to do if things were as bad as I feared, I decided to open the envelope, but only after calming my nerves with a glass of scotch. And when I saw the results, I immediately poured another one and drank it quickly. None of my 4 children were actually mine, but it was pretty clear that they had the same father. Having had a good drink, I had fallen out. Around 4 in the morning, I woke up and started thinking about what I should do. I suspected that Steve was the father of my children, but I needed certainty. It was at this point that I decided to get into high tech. There is a store not far from my house that specializes in surveillance equipment. So on Saturday morning, I went there and bought the whole kit. I installed tiny motion-activated cameras covering every room in the house, sound recorders. I also had tracking devices to put in Julia's car and Steve's SUV, so I would always know where they both were. I set it all up so that the information was dumped to a computer in the basement that I could access from my laptop from anywhere. I had installed the tracking device on Steve's SUV on Saturday afternoon when he came by and took me with him, since I had called to say that Julia would be out of town all weekend. At least I was sure he wouldn't be with her this weekend. I spent most of Sunday morning going through Julia's things for anything that might give her away. As far as I knew, she didn't keep a diary or notes, and her computer looked clean. In the back of her closet was some sexy lingerie I hadn't seen before, which was another piece of circumstantial evidence. When Julia came home with the kids on Sunday night, I greeted them all with a big hug. That night in bed, Julia just blew me away. "John, you don't worry too much, but I think I'm pregnant," she said. "Pregnant?" I asked her. "Yeah, I think so. I plan to go to the doctor tomorrow to see what he says, but I have a feeling," Julia confirmed. At this point, I decided I was going to go to the doctor to get a fertility test, too. Julia and I had been trying to have a baby for a long time before she got pregnant with Matt. I took time off work to be able to nurse her as many times as possible. It was like that with all the kids. I know it's not easy to get pregnant. We went through all that for the first 4 kids, and now she got pregnant without even trying. That seemed suspicious to me. I drove to a neighboring town on Monday and went to a clinic where no one knew me. I took the test and waited. My sperm count was above average. This was just another fact to add to the pile. I had a high sperm count. My wife and I had tried many times to get pregnant, and yet it was Steve who impregnated her. I rushed back to work and accessed the information that had been gathered to that point. The tracking devices showed that Steve left for work and then drove to a hotel on the east side of town. Julia's car spent part of the time at the doctor's office and then went to the same hotel. I had seen enough, so I went back to work. That night, Julia was so excited that she was pregnant that we were blessed with another child. I was holding back as hard as I could from spilling all the information I had and incriminating her. Over the next few weeks, I gathered even more information and decided that they had formed a pretty good routine. They met for a long lunch at the hotel on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They always had the same room booked. I took pictures of them going in and out of it, and there was no need to see what was going on inside. This was because on Tuesday and Thursday, they would meet at our house and have sex in our guest bedroom. The more I saw, the harder it was for me to keep from slamming the door. Finally, after watching them for 2 months, I recorded a phone conversation that drove me crazy. "Hey, are you comfortable talking?" Steve asked. "Yeah, John's playing golf and the kids are at their friends' houses," Julia replied. "I've been worried about John lately. He's been acting strange. Do you think he couldn't have found out everything?" Steve asked. "He hasn't figured out anything in 16 years. Why would he figure it out now?" Julia asked. "As for Matt, he's becoming more and more like me every day," said Steve. "So what? John thinks I'm the perfect wife. He'll never suspect I'm cheating on him, and he'll never believe that all 15 years I've been taking steps to make sure I only have children with you and not him," said Julia. "I'm still not sure I approve of that," Steve said. "Take it back now or you'll never touch me again." "Okay, I take it back. I can't wait until Monday. Oh, baby, I can't Monday. I have a lunch meeting. It's a really big deal, so Tuesday we're just going to need a really long lunch. Okay. What time should I be there? Steve clarified. Around 11. I'll see you then, Steve concluded the conversation. I listened to this conversation on Sunday. On Monday, I took enough information with me to start divorce proceedings based on adultery and went to see an attorney. So, John, what grounds for divorce do you choose? Dave asked. Marital infidelity. Are you sure? That's actually hard to prove in our state, said Dave. Well, maybe you can tell me if there's enough to prove it. Pictures of my wife and her lover in the process of sexual intercourse. I also have video, in fact, even some. Phone conversations recounting their affair, including one where my wife admits that she deliberately took steps to have children with her lover instead of me. And last but not least, DNA tests that show that none of the 4 children I am raising are mine. Is that enough? I asked. Yes, that should be more than enough. I'll send your wife the divorce papers right away, Dave replied. Can I pick the time and place where she gets the papers? What do you mean? Dave asked. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, she is supposed to meet her lover at our house. Can we make it so that she gets them at home, say at 11:30 or 11:45? Handing over the papers at the time she commits adultery would be murderous evidence. Yes, that's an acceptable idea. Would it be illegal to invite my wife's parents and sisters, a few of her friends, her lover's wife, and perhaps their bosses? I asked. I can see you're hungry for a little revenge. Well, if you tell them it's a surprise party in honor of the new baby, and they don't know in advance what they're going to see, it should be fine. Excellent, I concluded. After leaving the lawyer's office, I made a few phone calls and invited everyone except Mary to come to the surprise party in Julius's honor. Mary, of course, would tell Steve, and then he would know something was up and wouldn't go. At 10:45 Tuesday morning, I called Mary and asked her to meet me at our house for a little chat. I made everyone wait quietly in the yard until the party was all gathered for the party. I said Julia was resting inside, so we would sneak up and surprise her. Dave was also there with the divorce papers. We sneaked into the house unnoticed and headed for the guest bedroom. I swung the door open and we all yelled, "Surprise!" And there were many surprised faces both in the room and in the hallway. Mary immediately yelled at Steve. Julia's family started yelling at her. Julia started yelling at me. Steve tried to gather his clothes and jump out of the house, but his boss blocked the door and notified him afterward. Amidst all this chaos, Dave calmly walked over to Julia, who was sitting on the bed under a sheet and sobbing uncontrollably. Julia Davis, you are hereby served with these divorce papers filed by your husband, John Davis. He is seeking a divorce on the grounds of adultery. Mr. Davis is not seeking any form of custody of the 4 children already born or the child in your womb, as DNA testing has shown that Mr. Davis is not the biological father of any of the children, and a recorded phone conversation between you and Steve Wilson states that you intentionally prevented the children from being with Mr. Davis so that you could become pregnant by your lover. Mr. Davis is claiming 90% of the entire estate. A court date will be set for this case unless you accept the terms of these documents. Good day, Dave said. Dave delivered his speech in a loud, impassive voice, almost like a robot. He handed the papers to Julia and left. Both Julia and Steve lost their jobs. Steve divorced Mary. Julia's family, who always liked me, disowned her. I didn't get 90% in the divorce. I had to settle for 75%. But in a separate lawsuit, I got compensation from Steve for preventing me from having children. I loved Julia with all my heart, and if I had acted quickly and made a claim against her from the first moment of suspicion, it surely would have broken my heart. Now, however, knowing the depth of her infidelity and treachery, it was easier for me to cut her out of my life. I still see her around town from time to time, and each time she tries to apologize to me, but I don't want to hear it. She cheated on me for years. She deliberately kept me from making her a child so she could have Steve's baby, and then made me believe I was the father. If it wasn't for the fact that I loved her so deeply, I'd want to see her dead. But no matter how much she abused me, I'll always have memories of the good times. The kids were confused to learn that Uncle Steve was actually their father, and the cousins were their half-siblings. They all spent a lot of time in counseling because of this, and I'm sorry this happened to them, But it was another measure of Julia's revenge. She wanted Steve's kids instead of me, so now has to live with them hating her for what she did. They still call me daddy when they see me.